Hey guys, hope you're having an amazing day and welcome to another video. And today I thought I'd show you how it's super possible to totally run your NVIDIA GPU outside your computer case. So let's get into it, shall we? So what are the reasons why you'd want your graphics card to be outside the case? Maybe you'd want to show off your new expensive GPU? Maybe you just want better cooling? Or perhaps you fall into my situation, where you found out that the NVIDIA card is way too big to fit inside your case. Now, I have a pre-built mini desktop computer, a Dell 8940, which came with a small NVIDIA GeForce 3060 Ti. My new 3080 Ti physically dwarfs this, extending out by 1 centimeter outside the front frame. You might be thinking, why don't I just cut open the case? Well, I'm really no stranger to case modding, but given how tiny the case is, it'll pretty much look horrible and probably compromise the integrity of the entire frame. Not only that, if I did manage to fit it in, the Dell's power supply has not enough juice to run a more powerful GPU.
Unless you've got power!
Okay, so you might be thinking, why don't I just replace that with a new power supply too? And I would, however, if anyone knows these new Dells, they have their own proprietary power supplies with non-standard motherboard connectors. I would then have to specifically buy a new Dell power supply with the same form factor, which is usually more expensive than off-the-shelf retail ones. Fine then, so now you might be thinking, why don't I just take out the motherboard and swap cases? I wish it was that easy, but Dell again designs their own motherboards completely proprietary and won't fit standard ATX cases. And not only that, their CPU heatsinks are literally screwed into the inner frame of the case. So with everything purposely stacked against us, I figured out the definitive way to run my NVIDIA video card outside the standard confines of any pre-built PC. We'll first need to purchase something called a PCIe riser cable. This cable basically creates an extension of the 16-speed PCIe slot on your motherboard. It's typically used to mount video cards with an adapter vertically inside the case to reduce the bending of the graphics card's connector. For our purposes, we'll need a long one, like this 40cm one, to physically extend it further outside that purpose. Now there are cables for PCIe versions 3 and 4, depending on your motherboard. The latter is a bit more tricky in length and price, as it has more requirements for bandwidth. You'll also want to make sure that the ribbon is pre-stranded like this one, so that we can twist and manipulate it more freely. Next, we'll need to purchase a special ATX power startup switch, which will allow us to manually turn on a power supply without the need of connecting it to a computer. This adapter basically hot wires a power supply so that we can give dedicated power to our new GPU card. Now you'll have to make your own GPU video card stand, like this one I made a couple years ago for another project. Basically, it's composed of small MDF pieces screwed on a plank of laminate. You can build it however you want. The GPU will sit in the middle while the bracket is attached to the overhang, effectively fixing it into place. The center platform raises the card, which is important because the bracket also extends downwards, as well as the riser slot resting on top will not be perfectly flat. I'm using an old video card as a reference to mark where I need to screw things into place. You'll probably have to use one if you were to create your stand. It's just easier to work with, being as small and light as it is. We'll be switching it out with the new one later. There are mounting points on the riser card, as well as the bracket. We can easily align the card, pre-drill, and screw them all in. Make sure your card is as right-angled as possible to properly distribute its weight. Now for power, I have an Antec HCG 750-watt power supply, which is more than enough to dedicate towards the new RTX video card. We'll take the ATX power connector and plug it into the special startup switch adapter, which will click into place. This will effectively turn on the Antec power supply with the flick of a switch. Remember to keep the original switch on the power supply to the on position for it to work. If you have modular cables, the only two that you'll need is the ATX cable and the PCIe cables that will plug into the RTX GPU. Now the final steps are to connect the male end of the riser cable to the PCIe slot on the motherboard. And please remember to make sure that the desktop power cable is unplugged first, as well as our separate power supply is switched off before connecting anything. Finally, we can plug in the two PCIe power cables to the top of the RTX video card. Make sure we have the ATX startup switch adapter plugged in, as well as the AC power cables from your outlet to the back of the new power supply. Same goes for the back of your computer. Remember that the HDMI cable should now be plugged into the back of the new card. This is basically how it all looks. So just to review, our PCIe riser cable is connected to our PC from the RTX video card. The PCIe power cables are connected from our external 750 watt power supply. The power supply is then turned on by plugging in the startup switch adapter to the ATX connector. So we must first power on the video card before turning on the computer. This is important to allow the computer to detect it on initial startup. As you can see, the computer is now running my new RTX video card. I'm able to play games now at ultra settings, or render my 4K videos on this pre-built Dell computer, without buying a new case to fit this ginormous video card. Now we can even further compact this setup by moving the video card on top of the computer, thanks to our long riser cable. I don't know how far exactly we can extend it using longer risers, but I'm sure it's possible to go even further. For now, I'm pretty happy the way it is. If you wanted to, it's possible to create a separate enclosure for this new RTX and power supply combo to provide further protection from things like dust, but that's content for another video. Now the downsides are that you'll always have to have the side door open to allow the riser cable through. And you'll also need to remember to turn on the video card power supply first, before starting the computer every time. You can buy this Molex ATX adapter to activate the external power supply automatically. However, I've found that it doesn't work with some motherboards like this one, as there can be an initial delay that may not detect a video card on startup, so you'll have to experiment yourself for what works for you. If you liked this video, remember to hit that like button, comment below, and if you enjoy my content, again, please consider subscribing to this humble YouTube channel as it helps me create more content like this for you guys. Alright, cheers!